The 4.5 years of civil war in Syria has left more than 250,000 people dead, created a refugees crisis in Europe, and led to the brutal expansion of ISIS terrorists. On Monday, President Obama once again called for Syrian President Bashar Assad to step down. Here with some insight of the ongoing crisis is UC San Diego political science professor Barbara Walter and Sohaib Al-Agha, Vice President of Syrian-American Council. And Barbara, President Obama and President Putin openly disagreed on whether Assad should go. Is a peace agreement possible with Assad in power?
The short answer is absolutely. If you look over the last 70 years, over 50% of civil wars during that time period at some point had very serious, comprehensive negotiations for a peace settlement. So in most of the cases, at some point in time, the combatants are willing to negotiate. I think this is one of those cases.
Now let me get Suhaib. Putin said that Syria's president is actually the best defense against the terrorist group ISIS and other terrorist groups like that. Do you agree?
No, I disagree, of course. Putin is looking for Russia interest. Assad is what caused ISIS to begin with, and as long as Assad remain in power, the destruction and civil war will likely continue in Syria.
Why do you think Assad was responsible for ISIS?
Because in the form of brutality which he used against the population, and the power vacuum which he created in his action after the uprising, what caused ISIS to begin with an extremist group to come to Syria.
Now, you have family still in Syria. What's it like for them there today?
It's middle of very brutal civil war. Life is miserable, and it's an issue of life and death on a daily basis, as you may expect.
Well, getting back to the Russian interest, Barbara, Russia's been sending weapons to Syria and boosting its military presence there. What is Russia's interest in Syria?
They have two interests. One interest is they have historically been an ally of Syria and of the Assad regime, and they would like to maintain that relationship. Their more self-interested reason is that when Putin looks at Syria, he sees Chechnya, and he worries that the radical Islam that's emerging and spreading in Syria will eventually spread to Sunni Muslims in Russia as well and destabilize his country.
Do you have anything to add to that, Suhaib?
No, I disagree. Putin is playing a power game in the region, and he's looking after Russia interest in it during a time where the U.S. is backing off from the area.
Now, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who is up to replace Speaker John Boehner, and other opposition groups, they actually want a no-fly zone over Syria, saying that it could help stem the migrant crisis and provide some space for Syrian rebels to fight militants on the ground. Suhaib, do you think that a no-fly zone would be effective?
Absolutely, it would save life, it would reduce the number of refugees which are forced to leave Syria, and it will create a better platform for transition plan and diplomatic solution. Right now, the U.S. doesn't have diplomatic leverage in the area, and by having a no-fly zone, it can save life and can add diplomatic leverage to the U.S. Now,
Ellen, you disagree with that? You think a no-fly zone is not a good idea?
I think a no-fly zone would save Syrian lives. I think you cannot pursue a strategy of a no-fly zone thinking that you're going to remain strictly above ground and not on the ground. No-fly zones tend to escalate into ground wars, and the U.S. simply doesn't have the political will, or the American public doesn't have the political will to want to do that.
The Syrian conflict is approaching 5 years. Barbara, how do you see this civil war ending?
Most civil wars tend to end in decisive military victories for the government or rebels. In a minority of the cases, you get a negotiated settlement. That's what the United States and much of the rest of the world would like to see happen. Statistically, it's more likely to end in a decisive victory. If it ends in a negotiated settlement, a whole series of difficult things would have to happen for that to occur.
And Suhaib, how about you? How would you like to see this end, or how do you see it ending?
The Syrian conflict is between outside forces inside Syria, primarily supported by Iran and Russia. If there is a political solution, which is what the US and the West is hoping to achieve, it cannot be achieved without some leverage, some diplomatic leverage and some military leverage to bring Putin and Assad and Iran into the negotiating table. With the current trajectory, it seems like the US is giving up to Putin and Iran wills in the region.
All right, Sohaib Al-Agha and Barbara Walter, thank you so much.
Yeah, my
Thank you.
pleasure.